Just supplies, then we move on.
I have a bid of $50. Do I hear 60 for the estate? Sold to the man in the black hat!
The winter sun hung low over the settlement of Redstone Creek when Thomas Merchant rode in on his mare, dust coating his worn leather jacket. He was a tracker by trade, a man who spoke little and trusted less, spending most of his days alone in the wilderness guiding wagon trains through mountain passes. At 42, his face carried the map of hard years, but his eyes still held a flicker of something decent, something that refused to die despite everything life had thrown at him. He hitched his horse outside the general store, intending to buy supplies before heading back into the high country. That is when he heard the commotion. A crowd had gathered near the old auction platform where they usually sold livestock and equipment. Thomas normally avoided such gatherings, but something pulled him closer. Perhaps it was the uneasy silence that had fallen over the crowd, or maybe it was the way even the loudest men had gone quiet. On the platform stood a girl, no more than 16. In as a willow branch with dark hair that hung in tangles past her shoulders. Her dress was little more than rags stitched together, and her feet were bare despite the cold ground. Beside her stood Albert Gooding, a merchant known for buying and selling anything that turned a profit. He was calling out to the crowd, explaining that the girl had been with a family heading west, that they had abandoned her when they could not afford to feed another mouth, that she owed him money for meals and shelter. Thomas felt his jaw tighten. This was not the first time he had seen desperate people do terrible things, but something about this particular cruelty settled like a stone in his chest. The girl stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the crowd, as if she had learned long ago that hope was a luxury she could not afford. Gooding started the bidding low, talking fast, trying to make it sound like an opportunity rather than what it truly was. A few men called out now. Numbers, some laughing, treating it like entertainment. Thomas looked around at the faces he knew, people he had lived among for years, and felt a distance open up between himself and every single one of them. He did not plan what happened next. The words left his mouth before his mind caught up. $50. The crowd went quiet. It was more than twice what anyone else had offered. Gooding's eyes lit up with greedy satisfaction. He called out for any higher bids, but the crowd had lost interest now that the price had climbed beyond amusement. Going once, going twice, sold to Thomas Merchant. Thomas pushed through the crowd and handed over the money, bills he had earned from 2 months of hard work in the mountains. Gooding counted it twice, grinning, then gestured to the girl like she was a piece of furniture being delivered. Thomas ignored him and looked at the girl directly for the first time. Her eyes were gray, the color of storm clouds, and they held an intelligence that surprised, eyed him. She studied his face carefully, as if trying to determine what kind of man had just bought her future. He cleared his throat. "Come on then. We should get you somewhere warm." She followed him without a word, her bare feet making no sound on the frozen ground. The crowd dispersed, already moving on to the next bit of business, the next distraction. Thomas led her to the boarding house where he kept a room when he was in town. The owner, Mrs. Harriet Boone, was a practical woman with a kind heart hidden beneath a stern exterior. She took one look at the girl and disappeared, returning moments later with a pair of shoes, a warm coat, and a blanket. Thomas paid for a second room, then told the girl she should rest, that they would talk after she had eaten and warmed up. She nodded and followed Mrs. Boone upstairs without looking back. Thomas sat in the common room staring at his hands, wondering what exactly he had just done. He had no plan, no idea what came next. He only knew that walking away had not been something he could live with. An hour later, Mrs. Boone came down and told him the girl had bathed and eaten and was asking to speak with him. Thomas climbed the stairs and knocked gently on the door. "Come in," a soft voice answered. He entered to find her sitting on the edge of the bed, wearing a simple dress that Mrs. Boone had provided. Her hair was clean now, braided neatly. She looked younger and older at the same time. She gestured to the chair near the window. "Please sit." He did, suddenly feeling awkward in a way he had not felt in years. She folded her hands in her lap and looked at him with those steady gray eyes. "My name is Evangeline. Thank you for what you did. You did not have to." Thomas shrugged, could not stand there and do nothing. She nodded slowly. "Most people can. Most people do." He had no answer for that because it was true. She took a breath. "I need to tell you something. I need you to understand why I have to ask you for help, even though you have already done more than anyone had a right to expect." Thomas leaned forward. "Whatever it is, just say it plain." Evangeline looked down at her hands. "The family that left me, they were not my family. My real family, my mother and younger brother, they are 3 days north of here, in a settlement called Pinewood Ridge. When our father died last year, we lost everything. My mother took sick, and we had no money for medicine or food. I made an arrangement with a family heading south. They said if I worked for them, helped with their children, they would pay me enough to send back home. But they never paid me anything. When we reached Red Stone Creek, they told Mr. Gooding I owed them money, and they left me with him." Her voice remained steady, but Thomas could see her hands trembling. "I have not been able to send word to my mother in 4 months. She does not know if I am alive or dead. My brother, Samuel, he is only 11. They are alone." She finally looked up, and he saw tears balanced on her lashes, refusing to fall. "I know I have no right to ask. I know you spent your money to help me. But I am begging you, please, help me get to them. I will work for you for as long as it takes to repay every cent. I will do whatever you need. Just please help me get home." Thomas sat back in the chair, feeling like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed. He thought of his own sister, dead now for 15 years, lost to fever when she was about this girl's age. He thought of all the times he had chosen silence over action, comfort over courage. He thought about the man he used to be before life had beaten the softness out of him. He stood up. "Pinewood Ridge, you said?" She nodded, hope flickering cautiously in her eyes. He walked to the door, then turned back. "Get some sleep. We leave at first light. Pack whatever Mrs. Boone can spare. It is a hard ride, and the weather will not be kind." Evangeline stood, her hand covering her mouth. "You were. I'll take me. You will help me." Thomas nodded. "I will take you home." She crossed the room in 3 steps and grabbed his hand with both of hers. "Thank you. Thank you. I will never forget this. I promise I will repay you." He gently pulled his hand back, uncomfortable with gratitude. No need for promises. Just get some rest. That night, Thomas lay awake in his own room, staring at the ceiling. $50 was everything he had. The journey north would cost more in supplies and time. Winter was coming hard, and the mountain passes would be dangerous. Every practical part of his mind told him this was foolish, that he was throwing away his security for a girl he did not know, for a cause that was not his to fight. But beneath all that practical thinking was something else, something that felt like the first clean breath after years of holding his lungs tight. They left before dawn. Mrs. Boone packed them food and gave Evangeline a bedroll and warmer clothes, refusing Thomas's promise of future payment. "You just bring yourself back safe," she said, "and that is payment enough." The ride north was exactly as hard as Thomas had predicted. The temperature dropped, and snow began to fall on the second day. They pushed through, stopping only when the horses needed rest. Evangeline never complained, not once, though he could see her shivering despite the layers of clothing. On the 3rd evening, as they made camp in a grove of pine trees, she finally spoke more than necessary words. "Why did you do it? Why did you buy my freedom?" Thomas poked at the fire, watching sparks rise into the dark sky. "I had a sister once. She would have been about your age now if she had lived. I was not there when she needed help. I was off chasing gold in the hills, thinking I would come back rich and make everything better. By the time I came home, she was gone." He paused. "I guess I got tired of not being there." Evangeline was quiet for a long moment. "I am sorry about your sister. But what you? are doing now, it matters. It means everything. Thomas shook his head. I am just one man doing one thing. It does not change the world. She smiled, a small, sad smile. Maybe not the whole world, but it changes mine. It changes my mother's and Samuel's. Sometimes one thing is enough. They reached Pinewood Ridge late the following afternoon. It was smaller than Redstone Creek, just a handful of buildings clustered around a frozen stream. Evangeline directed him to a cabin on the eastern edge, barely more than a shack, with a thin trail of smoke rising from a crooked chimney. She slid off the horse before it fully stopped and ran to the door, pushing it open. "Mama?" "Samuel." Thomas dismounted slowly, giving them privacy. Through the open door he heard crying, joyful and broken all at once, voices overlapping with disbelief and relief. He stood in the cold, holding the reins of both horses, feeling like an intruder on something sacred. After several minutes, Evangeline appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "Please come in. Meet them." Inside, the cabin was small and drafty, but clean. A woman lay on a narrow bed near the fire, painfully thin, her face pale but lit with joy. Beside the bed stood a boy with the same gray eyes as his sister, staring at Thomas with open curiosity. Evangeline took her mother's hand. "Mama, this is Thomas Merchant. He saved me. He brought me home." The woman reached out a trembling hand toward Thomas. "Sir, I do not have words for what you have done. Bless you. Bless you forever." Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "No blessing needed, ma'am. I am glad she is home." He looked around the cabin, seeing the bare shelves, the thin blankets, the marks of deep poverty. Something hardened in his resolve. He turned to Evangeline. "I will be back tomorrow. There are some things I need to attend to in town." She looked confused but nodded. Thomas rode into the center of Pinewood Ridge and found the doctor, a tired-looking man named Foster. He explained the situation and paid him to visit the cabin, to bring medicine, to do whatever was needed. Then he went to the general store and arranged for food to be delivered, enough to last through winter. He spent the last of his money and then some, putting it on credit against future work. The storekeeper, seeing something in Thomas's face, agreed without argument. Over the next week, Thomas stayed in Pinewood Ridge, taking whatever work he could find to pay off his debts and earn a little extra. He repaired fences, cleared snow, guided a merchant through a difficult pass. Each evening he stopped by the cabin. Samuel started following him around during the day, asking endless questions about tracking and horses and the mountains. Evangeline's mother, whose name was Margaret, grew stronger with medicine and food, color returning to her cheeks. One evening, as Thomas prepared to leave, Evangeline walked him outside. "You are leaving soon. Going back to Redstone Creek." It was not a question. He nodded. "I have stayed longer than I planned. Work is waiting." She looked at the mountains, dark against the dimming sky. "I still owe you everything. I have nothing to give you." Thomas shook his head. "You owe me nothing." She turned to face him and he saw that she was crying. "You gave me back my life. You gave my family hope. How can that be nothing?" He did not know what to say, so he said the only true thing he could think of. "You reminded me why any of it matters. For a long time I just moved through days, not really living, not really caring. Helping you, it woke something up that I thought was dead. So maybe we are even." She smiled through her tears and did something unexpected. She stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. "You are a good man, Thomas Merchant. Do not let the world convince you otherwise." The next morning, Thomas saddled his horse in the early cold. Samuel came running out, pressing something into his hand. It was a small carving of a horse, rough but earnest. "I made it for you. So you remember us." Thomas closed his fingers around it, feeling the weight of the gift, the love carved into every imperfect edge. "I will treasure this. Thank you, Samuel." Margaret appeared in the doorway, still weak but standing on her own. "You will always have a place here. Always. Remember that." Evangeline stood beside her mother, wrapped in the coat Mrs. Boone had given her. "Be safe. Come back someday." Thomas nodded, not trusting his voice. He mounted his horse and turned south, the wooden horse tucked safely in his pocket. As he rode away from Pinewood Ridge, snow began to fall again, soft and silent. Thomas thought about the $50, about everything he had spent and given away. By all practical measures, he was poorer than he had been 2 weeks ago. But riding through that snow, with the weight of Samuel's carving against his heart, Thomas felt richer than he had in 20 years. He had bought a girl's freedom for $50. What she has. Dee revealed her story, her trust, her family's love had broken something hard and cold inside him. And in its place, something new was growing. Something that felt remarkably like hope,